Hello, this is Allie with the Perception Trainers, author of The Perception Diet, and today I want to talk to you about why the balance between efforting and resting on your spiritual path is so important, okay? Why you cannot do too much of one or too much of the other, and why both are completely necessary for you to advance and for you to become the person that you want to be, all right? So when I'm saying efforting, in the context of the spiritual path, I personally believe that all things are the spiritual path, okay? Like, I think your diet is your spiritual path. I think that your spiritual practices are your spiritual path. I think how you relate to people in your life are your spiritual path. I believe everything is your spiritual path. So I guess when I say spiritual path, I just mean your life. And so when I say efforting, what I'm saying is every single time we're ready to advance on our path, okay, it's going to require some effort, all right? So, for instance, when we're first starting a yoga practice, it doesn't necessarily, most of the time, feel very good when you first start out, okay? Usually it just feels like a whole bunch of effort, a whole bunch of discomfort, a whole bunch of being awkward and not knowing what's going on and not knowing what you're supposed to be doing and seeing all these other people who can do all these amazing postures and you are like, can't touch your toes, and that's how it feels in the beginning. And so it requires your discipline to keep going, right? But if you stick with it, if you stick with your practice, if you just keep showing up every day or every couple of days, eventually, after a while, your practice starts to become something that feels good. It starts to become something that does not require your discipline in order to do so much anymore, you see? And it's the same thing with healthy eating. At first, it's uncomfortable to change your diet. At first, it's uncomfortable to shift the foods that you're used to eating for new foods. It's uncomfortable to start to allow your body to kind of heal and go through those phases where the symptoms can be very uncomfortable. And it's uncomfortable to, especially socially, it can be very uncomfortable to change your diet and whatever. And so in the beginning, it requires discipline. But once you've done it long enough, once your body adapts to it and your mind adapts to it and you kind of get used to how it feels good to feel good, it doesn't require so much discipline anymore to eat healthy. You just become someone who eats healthy. And it's not something you think about or something you try to do. You just do it, you see? And that is what I'm talking about when I say efforting. So it's all of the work that you're doing in order to move forward to the person that you want to be. This is, your meditation practices are your efforting. Your yoga practices is your efforting. Your journaling practices is your efforting. Your awareness practices, where you're noticing how you're reacting to life and you're noticing why you're doing what you're doing, and then you're making effort to change that. And you're, like I say, you're starting to become aware of how the foods that you eat make you feel. And you are starting to shift those things. And you're putting forth effort, okay? So that's the efforting part of it. And that is an integral part of it. And I think that a little bit in the spiritual community right now, we've swung a little bit too far on the everything should be easy, just follow your bliss thing. And what I'm saying is that when we're in a place where we're not aware of ourselves and where we have self-destructive behaviors in our life, we can't follow our bliss. That's not an appropriate time to follow your bliss, because in those states, you're going to follow your bliss all the way in to your negative, destructive habits, you see? So in the beginning stages, the follow your bliss teaching isn't exactly the most applicable, because you do actually need to make effort to shift what you're doing. And like I've talked about this in lots of videos, yes, you need to be in a state of love before you can shift. You need to be in a state of understanding that you deserve something better before you start to shift. And if you are coming from this place of, I deserve something better, I want to feel better, I know that I can feel better, I'm not taking these huge big strides knowing I'm gonna feel totally out of my comfort zone and fail, I'm going to take these little itty bitty steps towards what I want to be doing because I know that that's the most self-loving way to make change, then that kind of efforting is awesome, you see? And so it requires discipline in the beginning. It requires effort. It requires doing things. And on your path, there's going to be 100 million beginnings, you see? Where every single time we kind of level up, it's a new beginning, and it requires discipline, and it requires effort. But on the other hand, we also need rest. We need recovery time. We need times in our life when we're not in discipline mode, where we're not in go forward mode, where we're not in drive forward mode, where we're just allowing ourselves to live, where we're just allowing ourselves to rest, where we're just allowing ourselves to be humans experiencing life, not on this constant rampage to improve, you see? So I want you to think of it like you are a ball of clay, okay? And in this life, your practices are the things that are forming the shape that you become. You see? So if we were to do no practices, if you're just to follow your bliss completely in kind of like your self-destructive mode, right, where you follow your bliss into overeating, or you follow your bliss into eating disorder behaviors, or you follow your bliss into hurting yourself in some way, you're not doing any effort to change what you're doing. You're not doing any effort to become aware of why you're doing what you're doing. You're not efforting at all. You're just going to be that blob of clay. Okay, and that blob of clay is just going to set as the blob, and that's probably, it's just going to be however the blob is, that's how you set. You see? Whereas when you do your disciplines, you're shaping the vase, you're shaping the clay into something that you want it to be. Your disciplines are the what forms the shape that you become, you see? But then again, now if you're only ever doing discipline, you're only ever doing the shaping, the vase can never set. The glass can never set. The cup can never set. You're just going to be clay that's constantly changing and molding and changing and molding and changing and molding. And it will always feel like you do your disciplines and you do your practices and they never settle in you. They never actually become your new way. They always stay a discipline. You see, they always stay something you have to effort towards. And that is because if you never let the vase set, the vase will never set. It will never be what you are. It will always be what you're trying to be. So this is why we need the balance of efforting and just resting, right? We need the balance of forming the vase and then letting it dry, letting it set. Too much letting it set means you're just the blob, right? And that's not what we want to be. Too much efforting means you're constantly moving, constantly changing, never actually becoming what you want to become, right? And that's the balance. So this is why you do effort. You do things that are moving you forward. You do things that you know are on your path. You do things that you know are taking you to the place you want to be. And then on the other side, you make sure that you have balance in your life, that you have rest, that you have play, that you have things that are just fun, that you allow yourself to just like read a trashy magazine every once in a while, or watch a TV show, or play games, or have silly conversation, or just do things that are not making you a better person, you see? And it is actually in the balance of those two things, knowing you have your disciplines and then allowing yourself to rest, is that your disciplines will become so much more effective when you allow yourself the time to let them set, and you allow them to settle, and you allow them to become what you are, you see? So it's not about discipline all the time, and it's not about rest all the time. Neither of these two states are where you need to be all the time, right? So you have your disciplines. So either you have your daily disciplines, like you do your asana practice, you do your meditation practice, you do your journaling exercises, you do your mindfulness work, you do that. And then you have times in the day where you read a book, right? Where you go for a walk, where you spend time with your friends and family and you just talk about your day, or you play games with your friends, or you do whatever, listen to music, whatever the things in your life that make you feel good and that are just relaxing and not self-improvement, okay? And I want you to know that this is coming from complete personal experience. I used to be so far this side, it was not even funny, right? I was so disciplined. Everything in my life was a discipline. And if it wasn't like advancing me spiritually or advancing me mentally or advancing me emotionally, I just wouldn't do it. And the thing was, I was constantly feeling like I was never getting anywhere, right? Like I was trying so hard, doing all of these things, and it was just like I was spinning my wheels, yeah? And it was because, again, I was just like constantly shaping the vase, constantly shaping the vase, constantly shaping the vase, but the vase never had time to set up. So these practices never had time to settle and become who I was. They never had time to be a part of my new way of being, you see? So I would like discipline, go home, see my family, be the exact same person that I always was, right? Exact same triggers set me off. Exact same way that I reacted, I always reacted. I'd go home, discipline, 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 discipline. Go back to see my family, do the same thing, right? Even though I was just like, man, I am not making progress at all. So long as I'm not in my completely controlled environment, I'm exactly who I used to be. And so I was like, maybe I just need, and it was, so like I say, it wasn't until I started giving myself a break. Do my disciplines, but then have time in the day where I'm not doing my disciplines. I'm not efforting. I'm not trying. I'm resting. I'm relaxing. I'm having fun. And then all of a sudden, these practices started to have an effect. They started to become who I was, you see? Because I let them settle. I let them set. I gave myself the rest and the time I needed to actually integrate those processes, integrate that discipline so that it became who I was, right? And then again, it kind of makes it that paradox where then all of a sudden the discipline isn't so hard, right? Yeah, I didn't have to effort so much to do my disciplines because I had that time to let them set and let them settle where I could see the benefit. And therefore, when I saw the benefit, it's so much easier to do the discipline. You see, because I'm not convincing myself that I should do it. It's like, no, this actually feels good. This actually gives me something that I want, right? And then discipline isn't so hard. So if you're really finding that you're struggling with discipline, you probably aren't giving yourself enough rest. You see, you're not giving yourself enough pleasure, enough play, enough mindless stuff because you're like, that's not spiritual, that's not progressing me, that's not whatever. Well, yeah, that's exactly the point. Yeah? You need that stuff. And that's where the practices will settle. And that's where the stuff will go in. But again, if you're on the other side, too much rest, too much pleasure, or, play, too much not being connected with yourself, you're never going to want to be disciplined, right? You're never going to want to do things that are going to move you forward. And then without that stuff, you're just the blob that settles how you settle, right? So, balance. Discipline, play. Discipline, rest. Discipline, letting the discipline settle. And then all of a sudden you see the benefit of the discipline and then you don't need to be so disciplined. Okay? So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them down below. I love hearing from you. If you want a Q&A from me, I need you guys to ask me questions. So what do you want to know? Do you want like a personal Q&A from me, or do you want more of a just a we have questions? I'm happy to do that. And follow me on Instagram. I'm Urban Fruit Bat. Follow me on Facebook, Perception Trainers. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.